Blog Talk Radio, the world's largest online radio network.
Hi, movie fans. This is Betty Jo Tucker thanking you for tuning in to Movie Addict Headquarters. You don't have to be a movie addict to visit here, of course. But if you are one, it's definitely the place for you. We have a wonderful show lined up today, folks. One that's sure to be a treat for movie fans everywhere. Ben Mankiewicz is here from Turner Classic Movies to help us celebrate the 100th anniversary of Universal Pictures and the return of Alfred Hitchcock's The Birds to the big screen for one day next week. Plus, we'll be revisiting an earlier interview with Tippi Hedren in which she talks about working on that classic horror movie. And film historian James Colt Harrison is back to co-host all the festivities. But before getting started, let's check with Nikki Starr to see if our chat is open. Nikki, are all systems go in the chat room?
They certainly are, and we are very excited for the show.
Well, we are too. Thanks so much, Nikki.
You're welcome.
And thanks to the folks signing up for the chat. We really appreciate them as well as our other listeners. And we appreciate Ben Mankiewicz for taking the time to join us today. You know, when Ben made his Turner Classic Movies debut way back in 2003, he became only the second host hired in that network's history. As a film critic, he currently co-hosts a movie review show called What the Flick? And co-hosted the nationally syndicated TV series At the Movies. He also reviews films for the Huffington Post, and in addition to his hosting activities at TCM, Ben will be hosting a new sci-fi reality series called Hot Set, which is premiering later this month. And he's even reluctantly taken on some acting roles on various TV shows. Welcome to Movie Addict Headquarters, Ben.
Yeah, I didn't. The acting stuff. We need to take that out of my bio. That's crazy.
Well, yes, but Ben, I even understand that you have a dog that may not be such a good actor either.
Oh my God, no! He's a shocking development. He is taking a nap right now. So we.
Is that Rookie?
That's Rookie. That's how he spends his days. He's a great dog. No, I am not an actor. I shot something. I had an acting role this morning for a friend of mine for no money. It's for like a student. No, she's not a student film. It's for a little independent short. But as soon as they started rolling it, I had to save my life. I mean, I'm just horrible. And every time I do this, my respect for actors goes up 3,000-fold. It is not easy to do well. It's easy to do ordinarily, but it is not easy to do well.
Well, but it's easy, I think, to be a movie addict like the rest of us here. Is that right?
Yes, that is. I have the greatest job on the planet.
And I know that you are one. I definitely know that you are one. It's great to have you with us, and it's also great to have James Colt Harrison back to co-host. He's practically one of the family now. Hi, James.
Hi there. It's wonderful, and I am part of the family. I just love being on, and it's great to meet all these wonderful movie people, and just great fun. So I will always do it whenever I'm asked.
Well, we really appreciate that, and so glad that you could be with us today. And I know you're eager to ask Ben some questions, so you have the floor now, James.
I have the floor. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, hi, Ben. It's so nice to meet you. I've watched you many times on television on Turner Classic Movies. And I must say that when you first came on Turner Classic, I said to myself, who is this young kid? Who are they putting on now? Is this a grandson of part of the Mankiewicz movie family? And I just couldn't figure it out. I thought maybe you had just gotten out of college or something, and they were giving you
well,
an
thank you for
intern
saying that. I was long out of college, long out of college. But thank you. It's interesting. When it's been 9 years. I believe 9 years this month. I believe I made my debut in September of 2003. Maybe it was August. But it took a long time to sort of win over this audience, and I'm very grateful to TCM for sticking with me. There was because of the way that the fans like you feel about the network, and this is something that is really particular to TCM. I'm a huge sports fan. I love, I think there's great television on now. I'm excited to watch, the season premiere of Sons of Anarchy tonight on FX, and I watch the shows on A&E, Breaking Bad and Mad Men and all those wonderful HBO and Showtime shows. But I don't feel like I have a duty to protect HBO or ESPN.
No.
And I think fans of TCM feel like they love us, but they also feel like they're watching us carefully so that we don't mess this up. And when I started, this young interloper with the goatee, and I wasn't really looking at the camera. They didn't have me looking. They were trying a bunch of different things in the beginning, and I think they thought, "What does this mean? What's going to happen to Robert? Is Robert going anywhere? Are they going to have commercials? Are they editing the movies? Like, don't change the thing we love." And it took people 3 or 4 years before they were like, "All right, I guess this Mankiewicz guy's okay. He can stay."
Exactly. But I do have a question for you, though. It's how is Turner Classic Movies participating in the 100th anniversary of Universal Pictures?
Well, we're a couple of things. First of all, as you mentioned, coming up, and I guess on the 19th, which I think is a week from tomorrow, right? Isn't that right? Yeah, Wednesday.
Right. Yeah.
We have we're going to be showing The Birds, limited time, limited release around the country, one day only. Again, part of Universal's 100th anniversary, and this is not just you're not just going to go in and get the movie. You'll go in and you'll get a really thoughtful, well-written, involved introduction from Robert Osborne, sort of really doing more than we do on the air, like a few minutes longer than what we do on the air, giving you some historical context, telling you where Tippi was in her life, Tippi Hedren, the star, the other stars, Suzanne Plachette and Rod Taylor, what they were doing, and, of course, stories about Hitchcock, and we will include then interviews that Robert has done with Tippi. I mean, it will get you the context you need to fully enjoy this film. And then we're doing it later on the 24th, not a week later, but we're doing it on October 24th. Excuse me. We're doing Frankenstein and the Bride of Frankenstein. It's a remarkable double feature.
Great.
That's in October, and then the one in November we have is To Kill a Mockingbird, and of course, now this being 2012, it's the 50th anniversary of To Kill a Mockingbird.
Oh, great choices!
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
And by the way, it's not part of Universal's anniversary, but we're also we'll also have coming up in October on the 30th anniversary of E.T., the extraterrestrial. All part of this partnership we have with Fathom, where you really get some really great perspective and insight into the movie and get the film re-released and get a chance to see it in the theater. And for movies like E.T. and To Kill a Mockingbird, certainly bring your kids, bring the whole family. It's a great event.
Well, to see these films on the big screen is just going to be so thrilling to people who've never had that experience. I have to tell you, Ben, that I'm old enough to have seen the Boris Karloff Frankenstein movie when it first came out, and I was just a little toddler sitting under the theater seat, just frightened as heck, but just fascinated and just looking up at that big monster on the screen. And in fact, I blame that movie for turning me into a movie addict. After that, I mean, I was hooked.
So that means it did its job. Seeing it on the big screen, that's a big event. I think what people forget is that you're not seeing it in the big screen, on a big screen on your couch. You're seeing it in a big screen, and you're sitting with 500, 1,000 other people who are as excited about this as you are, and you're seeing it with your soulmates, really. People who, many of us who love classic movies, we go to work or we're out at events and we want to talk about, that incredible supporting cast in Casablanca. But the people we're with, as wonderful as they may be, they're like, why are we talking about a movie that's 70 years old? Here you're with people who want to talk about this stuff. So it's that shared experience as much as seeing it on the big screen that I think makes the whole event worthwhile.
I agree, and I'm sorry, James. I interrupted. I know you have more questions, so I'm so sorry.
Well, we could talk all day because Ben is a great conversationalist. Obviously, we love him. But just as a side note, Ben, Gregory Peck was born right here in La Jolla and raised here and went to school here. His father owned a pharmacy in town. So we're very proud of Gregory Peck and To Kill a Mockingbird. So if people come out and see that, I want you to remember that he was right here from La Jolla.
I didn't know that. I didn't know that he was from La Jolla. Thank you for giving me that information. Yeah.
Yes, he was. You might use that if you're talking about the film. You might use that.
I will work it into my next introduction on
James.
I will.
James is always pushing La Jolla, and he always makes us so jealous because whenever I say how are things in La Jolla, he just describes paradise.
I think he went to. I think Gregory Peck. This is suddenly coming to me. I think Gregory Peck went to, and I don't know if it was called this then, but he spent some time at San Diego State. Because I have a friend who went to San Diego State, and they were mentioning that Gregory Peck went there, and this was years ago, and I was like, I won't associate Gregory Peck with San Diego State, but I'm pretty sure he was there for a little bit.
Yes, but the major school he went to, which was my school, was the University of California at Berkeley. That
makes sense.
Yeah, he studied at the theater program there in Berkeley, so I'm very proud of him for that, too.
That's what I said to the guy. Right? I was like, he didn't go to San Diego State, he went to Berkeley.
Yeah, he did.
And then it turned out, but he was briefly at San Diego State. Yeah.
Briefly. Yeah. But, anyway, I have another question for you. Why was The Birds selected as one of the films to be featured out of the thousands of films that Universal made in the last 100 years?
Well, have you seen The Birds?
Oh, of course.
I know you have. I'm kidding. But it was selected because, well, first of all, by showing Frankenstein, The Bride of Frankenstein, you get a good sense of, the dominance that Universal displayed early on in the sound era with their horror films. That was really sort of right. I mean, that's what Universal did. But then you move forward to, I don't really think of The Birds as a horror movie, but I see why some people do put it in that genre. But, to me, it is, I hate ranking stuff, and I hate calling stuff something the best. And it is certainly, to me, one of the 3 or 4 finest Hitchcock films. I don't know that it took a long time for, I think, other people to start recognizing that was a serious thing to say. It is Hitchcock, at his best, and that means something. It's thrilling. It's incredibly inventive. It's this study of the unknown. I mean, it's not so much the birds that scare us; it's that we don't know what the birds are going to do. And Hitchcock in that movie, there would be an overwhelming temptation for somebody making that story now to have a scientific angle where we learn that the birds ate some poisonous food and then it was spread from bird to bird, and that's why they're behaving this way. But we have nothing. The birds behave this way. We don't understand it. It is not explained. He makes no effort to. Then at the end of the movie, they appear to stop behaving that way. Or are they just taking an hour-long break? Who knows? He doesn't care. He's not interested in that. And I think that's a really key component to why the sort of the terror in the movie and the tension in the movie works so well.
Yeah.
Oh, I agree. I definitely agree about that, and I think this is probably a good place to play an important section of the interview that Jazz Shaw and I had with Tippi Hedren a couple of years ago. Actually, I'd like to tell listeners to check out the entire interview, which is, if they will just look up Tippi Hedren Speaks Out. That's an hour show, and she talks about her work in animal rights. But we've got a clip here where she talks about working with Alfred Hitchcock on The Birds. She does also give us a little comparison of Alfred Hitchcock with Charlie Chaplin that is kind of interesting, and you'll find out also what her favorite role is, and that might be a surprise. So let's listen to Tippi Hedren right now. Turning to The Birds, though, what was it like working with Alfred Hitchcock?
Well, he was amazing. He was not only my director, he was my drama coach.
Really?
So, yes, and The Birds was my first film.
Holy cow!
So I was really fortunate on so many levels that to have him as a director, and my acting coach. I mean, that was just phenomenal. And and he often said that he was thrilled that this was my first movie because I had nothing to unlearn. So I just tried to be putty in his hands, and I used the techniques that he taught me all the time.
Well, how did you happen to get that role, Tippi?
I was working in New York as a fashion model with Eileen Ford, and in the 50s, the commercials became very, very important, and so I was doing a lot of them. And Mr. and Mrs. Hitchcock were watching the Today Show, and they saw this commercial that I had done, and it was a story type of thing. It was for a pet milk product called Seago. It was a diet drink.
Right.
And I think I weighed all of 100 pounds when I did the commercial. But anyway, he saw it and decided to find out who the girl was, where she was, and so I just received a surprise phone call one day, asking me to come over to meet with an executive at Universal Studios. I had by then moved out to California so that Melanie could have a little bit of independence of just saying, "I'm going out to play, Mommy," and.
Tippi, you got to work with Alfred Hitchcock a couple of times. What was your favorite project with him? And
oh, I liked Marnie. I liked the best.
Really?
Yes.
Why was that?
The Birds was sort of a chase type film, and the Marnie was such a deep character. My God.
Yes, absolutely.
And that was the interest for me.
Well, working with Sean Connery had to have something to do with that, Tippi.
Not all bad. No, he was just wonderful. We see each other every now and then, not often, because he lives. He doesn't live in the United States. But he was really terrific. And Rod Taylor was terrific, and of course, working with Jessica Tandy was just marvelous.
And Jessica Tandy was in the Birds.
Yes.
Well, did you ever get hurt or have any problems with the real birds in the Birds?
Yes, I did.
Oh no.
That scene, off and on during the shooting we were hurt, scratched or whatever. But the scene where at the end of the movie where I go up the stairs and into the bedroom upstairs, and all of the birds attack me.
Yeah.
Well, they told me that they were going to, because when I read the script, I said, "And Mr. Hitchcock, how would we be doing that scene?" And he said, "Oh, well, we'll use the mechanical birds like we did with the children." And so I was perfectly comfortable about the whole thing, and it was one of the last scenes we did during the shoot. And at the first day, it was a Monday, I was in my dressing room on the set, and the assistant director, Jim Brown, came in, and he said, he couldn't look at me. He looked at the floor and the walls and the ceiling. That was you, Jim. And he said, the mechanical birds don't work. We have to use real ones. And out the door he went. Well, I just was stunned. I went out to the set, and, this isn't anything they had just planned on. There was a whole cage built around the door that I come in. And there were 5 cartons of raven and seagulls and a few pigeons thrown in. Prop men with gauntlets up to their shoulders, and which they threw at me for 5 days.
I don't blame you in any way whatsoever, but I do have to say I still have nightmares about that because I was a fairly young child when that movie came out, and oh my God, that was frightening.
It was frightening. It was supposed to be. We worked hard to make it that way.
Well, you were successful, and do you know what? It was not just frightening while the movie was on. I mean, because it sort of led to kind of unending terror with people. My son, who is now grown and has grown children of his own, is still frightened to death of birds.
Excuse me for laughing, but, isn't that great?
It is great.
I hope he gets over it pretty soon.
I don't think he will. I think he's kind of proud of it now.
Oh, there's a funny little story here. We serve about 600 pounds of meat every day to the big cats, and we have this huge flock of raven who live here because they're meat eaters, and they are in seventh heaven living here.
Do you ever think back to the movie and just run away like, oh no?
Oh, I do it all the time. Yeah. Oh no, here they come. They're coming.
Well, Tippi, what was the whole idea in the birds? I know you had those gorgeous green suits.
I had 6 of them. Yes.
You had 6 green.
Yeah.
What was the point of that? Do you know?
The point of the birds attack?
Of the green, yeah, the green.
Oh,
suit.
the green. Oh, the green was because that particular shade of green is very easy to look at.
Ah.
And Hitch and the beautiful, wonderful Edith Head were always very, very concerned about any kind of fashion or what does the movie require. And when you're in the same thing, the same outfit throughout the movie, I think I had another suit at the beginning of the film, and the coat. But those were my 3 things, and the nightie from the general store. But it was very important that the color was acceptable to people, and wasn't the kind of thing where, oh, if I see that dress one more time, I'm going to scream. And the Edith Head called the color Eau de Nil green.
Ooh.
And color was one of the most important things for his leading ladies to sort of enhance the performance even. The best way I can explain that one was in Dial M for Murder with Grace Kelly.
Yes.
In the first scene, she's in a red cocktail dress, and she's very, very elegant and provocative. And after the murder, her clothes become very much more drab.
Right.
And at the end of the film, she's where they take her away. She's in gray.
Yes,
and those kinds of things are very important psychologically to the viewer.
Sets the tone.
Exactly. And Alfred Hitchcock was a master at that. And is there any truth to the rumor that they did tie birds to you?
Oh yes.
Oh my
yes,
gosh.
they did. Rita Riggs, who was my dresser, put bands around my body with elastics coming through the tears in the dress. And they then just loosely tied the leg of the raven to my body.
Oh my gosh!
Tippi, you work with so many famous people. For example, Charlie Chaplin.
Yes.
And we talk. Betty Jo and I talk to people all the time who are kind of involved in the industry or would like to be or like to understand it more. Could you do us a favor and just kind of contrast a little bit? Like, what's the difference between working with Alfred Hitchcock and working with Charlie Chaplin? What are the stylistic differences that you ran into?
Well, there were many. Alfred Hitchcock was so sure of what he wanted out of every scene that he was so well prepared that we did hardly more than 2 or 3 takes on any scene. It was really pretty amazing, and he was so definitive as to what the whole picture should look like. Everything was totally operated by him, and he always had people around him who worked picture after picture after picture with him. The way he directed with me, I don't know exactly what he did with the others, but I read the script over and over and over, and we would talk about the film as a whole. We would talk about the different characters, the relationship of each character to the other, and to the point where by the time we got on the set, we all knew what we were doing, and it was actually done very, very easily. He gave very little direction, actually on the set, and he really spoiled me terribly because he first of all, he worked 9 to 5. Have you ever heard of that in a movie?
No.
Not today, no.
No. And interestingly enough, he always wore a black suit, a white shirt, and a black tie. His assistant director wore a sport jacket and slacks and pants. His DP and the assistant cameraman all were dressed every day.
Uniforms.
Yeah, well, but it was a very elegant. Hitch thought of it as being a very, very elegant profession.
Yes.
And it was.
And Charlie, on the other hand, the way Charlie directed, now that's where the film should have been done. So many people have said they should have shot Charlie directing, because he would take each person in the scene, each actor's character, and perform it. And then say, all right, now you do it. Now, can you imagine following Charlie Chaplin?
Oh, my gosh, that is so interesting. I think Tippi's whole interview was just one of our favorites on the show. And, Ben, I know you've interviewed Tippi several times. What's your reaction to her description of working on the birds?
Well, it's interesting. If you when you get to know Tippi, and when she starts to open up after a few glasses of wine, her relationship with Alfred Hitchcock, incredibly complicated, and everything you heard there is true, and she is enormously grateful to him for giving her start. He also ruined her career, and he said he was going to ruin it, and he did it. And Alfred Hitchcock, his relationship with Tippi Hedren, he is the poster child, textbook definition of horrible sexual harassment. Tippi never doesn't complain about it. She's been honest about it. She's written about it now. But she has no bitterness, which I think is a real testament to her, because she also knows that he gave her big break. But when he became obsessed with her, and not in the way we traditionally think of Hitchcock being obsessed with his sort of cool, icy blondes, Kim Novak and Grace Kelly, but really off camera tried very hard to start something with Tippi, who had no interest in this, was friends with Alma Hitchcock, Hitch's wife, and was trying to be professional. But when Hitchcock then said, "You'll never leave your contract with me. You have a young daughter to support." Of course, that was Melanie Griffith, and you have and she supports her parents. So I know that you won't walk away from this. And she very courageously said, "No, I will. The people who love me would not want me to be in this situation." And this really came to a head. It started during The Birds. It came to a head during Marnie. And he said, "Well, I'll see to it that you never work again in this business." And Francois Truffaut wanted to work with her during this time. Hitchcock wouldn't let it happen. Eventually she did have a career after that, but she was 36 years old at that point. She started her career very late. He kept her from being a big star during the 3, 4, 5 years where she could have made that happen. And, it is literally the definition of sexual harassment. And she speaks honestly about that. It's painful. It's emotional for her to talk about that. But that's part of their relationship. And in fact, it is going to be, I've seen it, I saw it at a screening with Tippi, an HBO special called The Girl, about the Hitchcock-Hedren relationship that I think airs first on the BBC and then over here on HBO sometime later this year. I think it's coming up. It's very good. It's very, and for people who care about this era of Hollywood history, it's certainly worth watching.
Wow, I hadn't heard about that HBO special coming out. Thank you for telling us about that.
Yeah,
it is a sad story.
Yeah,
and it is wonderful that she's dealt with it the way that she.
Yeah, she's very. It's hard for her. I think it's hard for us because we so admire Alfred Hitchcock's work, and there's no reason for us to stop admiring Alfred Hitchcock's work. But it is, it's incongruous. It's hard to strike a balance and understand that this man who was so professionally successful, at least in this respect, was very personally flawed.
Yes, that is very, very sad. And I was wondering, James, did anything that Tippi said surprise you in that interview? I know probably you're surprised at what Ben just said.
No, I had heard that story before, but it's certainly a misuse of power.
Yes.
The worst kind, and the poor. I mean, she was a young girl then when she made the film, and it's too bad that she had to put up with that. Although there are wolves everywhere in Hollywood, so it's one of those things. Sad, but I mean, I still love Hitchcock's work, no doubt about it.
Oh yes,
an artist.
One of the great things about Tippi. So does Tippi.
Yes.
That's. When I tell the story, I fear that it's so much better to hear it from her, because when you hear it from her, it's not said with anger or bitterness. It's said with some frustration, and she obviously wishes it hadn't happened. She wished she'd handled it better, but she was like so many people. She was embarrassed to even bring it up at the time. But she is enormously fond of Hitchcock's work and has fond memories of him, because he meant so much to her in so many other ways. He made some very significant personal mistakes with her, but she's not bitter in any way about it.
No.
Well, I'm glad of that. And you know what? We've had a caller holding for such a long time who's been very, very patient, and I think this might be a good time to let that caller come on the show. So, hello, caller from 441. Who is speaking, please?
Hello.
Hello, is this Richard?
Yes, this is Richard. Yeah. Hello.
Oh, hi. This is Richard Jack Smith, who's calling all the way from Wales, and thank you for being so patient and holding on. And do you have a question or a comment for Ben?
Yeah, I was going to ask you about the effects in The Birds, if that's okay. There was a question about the last shot in the film, about how many pieces of film were used. Does he know?
I don't know, and I'm trying to the last shot when they're driving away.
Yeah. Do you know how many pieces of film were used for that shot?
I don't. Not off the top of my head. I mean, there was probably many, based on the way Hitchcock worked, and his fondness for using, when possible, for using scenic painters as a backdrop. But I don't know. Why? Is there? Do you know?
32 pieces of film.
Wow, that is well. I was clearly I went the right direction with. I suspect a lot. Yeah. That's not totally unusual for Hitchcock, although that's a remarkable number. Hitchcock, you heard a little bit of it in Tippi's interview, and I asked her about this, and she said I was overstating it, and I'm sure I was. But from when you read about Hitchcock and you read about his intense preparation and the fact that, as she said, at 5 o'clock he was done, that for him the preparation was the joy. And the actual shooting of the movie, that was the easy part. Like the work had already been done for him, so he knew, and that's why at 5 o'clock he was like, "Yeah, I've done this for 8 hours today. That's enough." The months that he spent with the screenwriter and with the production designer getting this movie ready, that for him was the real art. So I'm sure that final scene, 32 pieces of film sounds incredibly complicated. For Hitchcock, I suspect that had been storyboarded for months.
That sounds about right. And Ben, I wanted to tell you that Richard Jack Smith is a film critic, and he does write very wonderful film reviews for Real Talk Movie Reviews. And I'm just so happy that he called in from Wales. I think Richard, what time is it over there in Wales now?
It's 9:33. Just turned 9:34 now.
Almost bedtime. Well, thank you for the question. Was there anything else that you wanted to say to Ben, or any question?
No, I just thought it was interesting trivia. I mean, I watched the making of the birds today in preparation, for the thing. But I found a lot of the answers were actually in the documentary, about the making of the movie and the fact there was some like 371 trick shots in the film, which I thought was remarkable because you look at it, it's so seamless, the paintings and how it integrates with the actual footage that they shot and how it was all blended together seamlessly and everything.
Yeah, I guess, to the notion that any director from Hitchcock's era or even any modern day director who's any good at his job doesn't prepare is a silly thing to say. Of course they do. But every time I see something about Hitchcock, I am just really struck by his incredible preparation. And Tippi, is her first exposure to filmmaking comes from Hitchcock, first with The Birds and then Marnie. And then once sort of the difficulties were over and she was able to get out of her contract, but years had passed and the quality of the work had diminished and she started working with other directors, she did very quickly learn that, no, not everybody was exactly like that. And there were a lot of directors who were like, well, we'll try it like this. Let's see how that looks. And Hitchcock was not a see how this looks kind of guy.
Yeah. We're getting a little bit of feedback. Richard, do you have any speakers on, or are you doing any taping? Because the feedback started when you came on. Could you check on that? See if you could turn your speakers down.
No, there might be some sounds from downstairs. I think my father's watching a movie or something. But I didn't have any other questions.
Well, let me just mention one thing that I think is worth bringing up along because we're talking about Hitchcock and how he sort of his preparation and bringing up the 32 pieces of film in that final scene. But Hitchcock, I think it was To Catch a Thief. I know it was a Cary Grant picture that Hitch, he didn't like you to deviate from the script. He wanted you to shoot things his way. And Cary Grant had an idea for a scene and he wanted it tried. And he didn't think it was working quite his way, and Hitchcock kept saying, no, we're going to do it my way. But it's Cary Grant, so you can't ignore him, right? I mean, Cary Grant is a guy with significant power. And so finally Grant said, look, Hitch, let's shoot it your way, and we'll shoot it my way. And then afterwards, I'll leave you alone. You decide. Just trust me. Let's you shoot it my way. And Hitchcock says, okay. Then afterwards, they get ready to shoot the scene. They shoot Cary Grant's scene, and then they shoot it Hitch's way. And when they finish shooting it Hitch's way, the entire crew bursts out in applause. And Cary Grant comes back and says, well, I mean, everybody loved it. I guess you're right, Hitch. And, of course, while Cary Grant had been in the trailer, Hitchcock told the crew, when we finish shooting it this way, you're all to explode into applause.
I like that story. Well, Richard, thank you very much for calling in. And we're going to mute you now, but keep listening on the phone, or you can join in the chat. But I'm going to mute you right now, and we'll see if we have a little change in the feedback. And I have an important question for you, Ben. I am just so curious about this new sci-fi series that you're going to be hosting called Hot Set. Would you tell our listeners about that, because I know they'll be really interested in it?
Yeah, it premieres a week from today, on Tuesday. And that's Tuesday the 18th on the Sci-Fi Channel at 9 o'clock Eastern. I think 9 o'clock everywhere. And it was a really remarkable show. I learned so much. It is a show done by the same production company that does another wonderful show for Sci-Fi called Face Off. That's a reality show competition between makeup artists, movie makeup artists, and it's really amazing to see how these incredibly talented people create these. We're talking about Universal and their horror movies. How these makeup artists create sort of these really remarkable, mythical, fantastical creatures. The idea in Hot Set is we take two production designers, two sort of young or production designers who might be a little older but haven't quite made it yet in the big time, and they're given a scene, an inspiration, say, build a supervillain's lair that a James Bond-like character is caught up in. And then they have 3 days and $15,000 with some teammates to construct a set and shoot a scene on that set. And it is amazing insight into how movies are made. I mean, all the stuff that Richard mentioned, that's on the sort of the making of DVDs of the Birds. I mean, this is true how movies are made. This is the making of a movie, and you see these young, incredibly talented people start with nothing, and in 3 days, with a limited budget, build these remarkable movie sets, and then shoot a scene on them, and then be judged by 3 really distinguished, talented production designers who serve as the panel of judges on our show.
Oh my gosh, that is going to be something that movie addicts will be glued to their television set watching.
It is a show. If you love movies, then this is a really great show. Really, sort of, it's peeling back the veil of how movies are made. It's really, I think, a terrific show. I feel really blessed to have been a part of it. You know, I'm the host. I learned so much about production design and how critical that is to the success of a film.
Yes, I understand that you were not so sold on how important that was before you hosted that show. Am I right?
This makes me sound a bit like an idiot, but it is true. You know, I don't know that I ever said this out loud, but you look at the credits at the beginning of the film, and you see the incredibly significant credit up front that the production designer gets. You know, and I'm a guy, to me, what drives a movie almost less than the director is the screenplay. Obviously, you need a great director, who otherwise you can screw up a terrific screenplay. But I'm looking for plot, and I'm looking for character development. I'm looking for story. All of a sudden, I spend a little time working with these people, with these amazing production designers, Lily Kilvert, Barry Robeson, Kurt Ram, Kurt Beach, excuse me. Kurt Ram is a trumpet player for Bruce Springsteen and the E Street Band, who I just saw.
Right.
And Kurt Beach, and it is. Look, I mean, here's what you need to shoot a great movie. You need a director. You need a cinematographer, director of photography, and you need a production designer. That's it. Those 3 people. That's who makes movies. And you get a great production designer. Oh my God, what they can do to make a movie look spectacular is remarkable. I was really, really overwhelmingly impressed by the talent of these people.
Well, I agree with you that the production design is very, very important in films, but I certainly have thought that for a long time. And James, are you getting eager to see Hot Set on the Sci-Fi Channel after listening to Ben?
Well, actually, yes, because I'm so fascinated with the behind the scenes of movie making. That thrills me. I know every time I've been on a set, I'm just gaga, because I love all the things that go into making a movie.
What struck me, there's obviously great planning. You talk about storyboarding, and these people plan before they spend their $15,000 at the beginning of their 3 days. But what was really striking is the degree of scrounging that goes into it. Like, and the judges told me that that's exactly what happens on a reel. They got these big plans, and then the director comes in and says, like, yeah, I got a totally different idea. I want to shoot the scene this way. And they don't have any money left, or very little money. And they're calling friends, and they're using the back ends of cars, and they're just jerry-rigging things that end up looking remarkable on screen. And it's that was really something to learn, to not think that this is. These are creative people, these are artists, and they are constantly thinking about what little weird thing can we use to make our art work better.
And some are very, very successful at doing that. I wanted to tell our listeners that we have extended the show for 15 minutes because this is such an important topic, and we're so happy to have Ben here. So we have time now to go back to the birds, because there were some things that we didn't get to ask, and I just wanted to make sure that Richard got his questions in. And I see that we do have some guests in the chat room, and we've got Nancy Lombardo, who's the host of Comedy Concepts. She's a New York comedian and actress, and her show is just very, very fun and very interesting. She has a CD out called Color Me Crazy, which has some of her work on it that's just hilarious. And so I always like to give it a plug and to tell listeners to check out Nancy Lombardo. We have Kai Timer, And we have somebody who is going by the number 46526. And so I'm not sure who that is, but I want to welcome everybody who has signed up for the chat. We really do appreciate it. But I was wondering, in terms of the birds, Ben, what impressed you the most about Tippi Hedren's performance in that movie?
Well, I mean, first of all, that it was her first role, but that always seems almost like a backhanded compliment, like you thought maybe she should have been better if she had more experience, and I don't think that's the case. I think that her stoicism really works in the film because she, like the rest of us, sort of can't quite fathom what is happening. Doesn't really take it in. She's beautiful. She knows she's beautiful. She knows how to use her beauty. And then all of a sudden she's in this situation where, of course, her beauty is useless against this unknown force that we just don't understand and that Hitchcock is not going to help us with. He is not going to explain anything about what's motivating these birds. And I think that manner of playing the role worked incredibly well. The fact that it really, except for maybe that scene that you heard in the interview talked about where she goes up in the attic, inexplicably, I might add, goes into the attic. Why would anybody go into? Why would anyone walk up there? That's really the only time she's really thrown off her game. It's sort of that composure, that icy facade fades. And I asked her in one interview that we had, hey, why the heck did you go up those stairs? And she said, thinking the same thing, she said, well, I asked Hitchcock, because we're reading the script and we know the terror and it's attacked the children, it's killed Suzanne Plachette, the birds are dangerous. Why would I go up those stairs? She asked Hitchcock, and Hitchcock, of course, said to her, my dear, you go up those stairs because I tell you to go up those stairs. So that's as much explanation as Hitch felt he needed.
Yeah, you would definitely do what Hitchcock said. Well, James, do you have any comments that you'd like to make about Tippi's performance in that movie? Do you kind of agree with Ben that she was so good because it was her first movie? I kind of wouldn't have even known that it was her first movie. She was so good. But
no, actually,
what's your reaction?
I didn't even think it was her first movie when I saw it. I just thought, oh, she's a nice actress. She's wonderful in this part. And I was very impressed. So I wasn't thinking that it was her first film at all because she did everything so well. But I was just wondering if Ben had a favorite scene in The Birds besides the stairway scene.
Yeah, I mean, the scene with the kids when the birds attack is a really powerful scene.
Yeah.
Seeing the phone booth scene is great. Which comes right after, I guess, the diner scene. I mean, it's all so good. I mean, right in the beginning when she walks into the store, when we get the little, I believe that's where the Hitchcock cameo is. I mean, it's good throughout. I mean, she gives a commanding performance. She's in just about every scene.
Yeah.
It's all great. I don't. I'm struck by the scene where she's first attacked by the bird when she's crossing the bay in Bodega Bay, trying to surprise Rod Taylor. That's a remarkable scene, sort of, because there's that sense of, why did that bird do that? The bird's messing up my hair, and it's just this little, very subtle premonition of what's to come.
Yeah. I particularly like the phone booth scene when the birds were attacking the glass and crashing into it, and I kept thinking, oh, come on, crash through and bite her. And, I was only a kid then, but I wanted to get some more blood.
Well, it's a pretty bloody movie for 1963, however.
Yeah.
I love that you hear her sort of flippancy with when she shot the attic scene, and they tied the birds to her. I mean, and didn't tell her. And then what she doesn't mention is she spent, I believe, a week in the hospital after that, just from sheer exhaustion. I mean, she went home. She thought she was okay. She got back. I think it was a weekend. I think that was a Friday where they shot that. And then she went home, and Melanie couldn't wake her up. She was so worn down, so exhausted that Melanie, in a panic, who was such a little girl, couldn't wake her up, and Tippi went. I'm not sure it was a full week, but they shut down production, I believe, for a week, and she was in the hospital for at least a few days, and maybe longer. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I didn't know about that. So that was quite a traumatic experience for her. Well, Ben, you heard Tippi talk about the comparison between how Alfred Hitchcock worked and Charlie Chaplin. Had you heard that before about Charlie Chaplin doing the roles and asking the actors to do it just like he did?
Yes, I had. They were clearly, their styles very different. Hitchcock, when she was shooting that film in London with Chaplin and with Brando, I believe, that was her first meeting with Hitchcock since the ugliness of their breakup. Not breakup like they didn't have a romance, but I mean the end of their business relationship. I think it had been about 4 years. That was a countess from Hong Kong, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so she was in London, and Hitchcock, and she had tea with Hitchcock and Alma Hitchcock. And again, they hadn't seen each other in 4 years, and obviously it's been a terribly difficult situation for Tippi. And so they got together. She described it as an incredibly awkward lunch or tea. And then she said, hey, look, I'm here making a movie with Charlie Chaplin and these two sort of genius Brits who came over and played such a critical role in reinventing American film. She thought, wouldn't it be wonderful, because I believe they had never met, but if Hitch would meet Charlie Chaplin and get a photo of Hitchcock and Charlie Chaplin together in London. Wouldn't that be a great photo? She said. I think just hoping to break the ice of this incredibly awkward lunch she was having with Hitchcock and his wife. And Hitchcock, of course, being Hitchcock, said to her about taking a picture with Charlie Chaplin, now why would I want to do that? So,
oh my God!
Alfred, there weren't one of a kind, Alfred Hitchcock. Yeah. So, needless to say, there was no photo.
Oh my gosh! Well, I understand that. Of course, Marlon Brando was in The Countess from Hong Kong, and I can't imagine him wanting to do any of his scenes just the way Charlie Chaplin was doing
I'm curious.
So,
I would like to know more of that story. Tippi and I have talked a little bit about A Countess from Hong Kong and Chaplin, but I have a tough time believing that Chaplin was telling Brando what to do, even under any circumstances. And it's impossible for me to believe that Brando paid any attention to it.
I know. I just am kind of thinking the same way. Well, I have one more question for you, Ben, because I do see that our time, even though we've extended it, is almost over. And I was just wondering how you would rank the Birds among Hitchcock's movies.
Well, I mean, I love North by Northwest, and I love Strangers on a Train, and I love The Birds, and I love Notorious. Those are my 4 favorite Hitchcock movies. So I would say that in those, depending on sort of my mood, because they're very different movies, that's sort of, they go in some order there. To me, those are the 4 best Hitchcock movies. I know that Vertigo just edged out Citizen Kane for the first time in decades as the #1 movie of all time. Vertigo doesn't do it for me the way those others. I mean, I get it. Vertigo's wonderful, but to me, it's not even. Like I said, it doesn't even crack my Hitchcock top 4. So I have a tough time believing that it's a better film than Citizen Kane.
Well, nobody's perfect, Ben.
That's right.
At this point, you have been.
Yeah.
Vertigo is definitely mine.
Vertigo's your favorite. All right. Well, look, you're clearly the people are with you. The majority has spoken.
The majority, the people have spoken, and I just get hypnotized, I think, when I'm watching that, and I watch it over and over again, and I never remember how it ends. So that's really fortunate, because then I can enjoy it every time that I
Well,
that
that's
I
one
see
of the
it.
great things. It's one of the problems why I don't like making lists, because when you make a list of Hitchcock's top 4 movies and you don't include Vertigo, then I end up being the guy who doesn't like Vertigo. I love Vertigo. Vertigo's great. I just those other movies are like a little tiny bit greater, but that's the problem with list making. I mean, we all love the movies. We all love, and we certainly all love Hitchcock. So.
Absolutely, my favorite director. Not necessarily my favorite person after today's show, and learning all of these things about Alfred Hitchcock. But you can't take away from his cinematic artistry. Well, our time is almost up, so I want to thank you, Ben, for being such a terrific guest today. It's
my pleasure. Thanks
been
for having me.
Fun talking with you. Now, I hope you'll come back again to visit us. Is that a possibility?
Oh, no, this was it. Yeah, of course, I would love to. Yeah, anytime. My pleasure. Thank you for asking me.
Well, good. We'll look forward to that. So, time to wrap things up now. So, this is Betty Jo Tucker giving a big shout out to the folks at Blog Talk Radio for featuring this episode as one of today's staff picks. We really appreciate it. Thanks to James Colt Harrison for doing an excellent job again as co-host. To Richard Jack Smith for calling in all the way from Wales, to Nikki Starr for her help, to Neil Haley for his technical assistance, and to all our listeners and chatters. I hope everyone enjoyed the show. I know I sure did. Special thanks to Turner Classic Movies for keeping wonderful films like The Birds alive for us, and congratulations to Universal Pictures on its 100th anniversary. Please come back next time, dear listeners, for our special tribute to Morgan Freeman. In the meantime, don't you forget to check out our film reviews at realtalkreviews.com. That's REEL, realtalkreviews.com. That's all for now, folks. So here's the talented A.J. Daniels closing the show with a song Nikki and I dedicate to all our Blog Talk Radio listeners.
Blog Talk Radio, where millions of hosts and listeners gather. Blog Talk Radio, the world's largest online radio network.
Hi, movie fans. This is Betty Jo Tucker thanking you for tuning in to Movie Addict Headquarters. You don't have to be a movie addict to visit here, of course. But if you are one, it's definitely the place for you. We have a wonderful show lined up today, folks. One that's sure to be a treat for movie fans everywhere. Ben Mankiewicz is here from Turner Classic Movies to help us celebrate the 100th anniversary of Universal Pictures and the return of Alfred Hitchcock's The Birds to the big screen for one day next week. Plus, we'll be revisiting an earlier interview with Tippi Hedren in which she talks about working on that classic horror movie. And film historian James Colt Harrison is back to co-host all the festivities. But before getting started, let's check with Nikki Starr to see if our chat is open. Nikki, are all systems go in the chat room?
They certainly are, and we are very excited for the show.
Well, we are too. Thanks so much, Nikki.
You're welcome.
And thanks to the folks signing up for the chat. We really appreciate them as well as our other listeners. And we appreciate Ben Mankiewicz for taking the time to join us today. You know, when Ben made his Turner Classic Movies debut way back in 2003, he became only the second host hired in that network's history. As a film critic, he currently co-hosts a movie review show called What the Flick? and
There you go.
co-hosted the nationally syndicated TV series At the Movies. He also reviews films for the...
There's To Kill a Mockingbird, and of course, now this being 2012, it's the 50th anniversary of To Kill a Mockingbird.
Oh, great choices!
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
And by the way, it's not part of Universal's anniversary, but we'll also have coming up in October on the 30th anniversary of E.T., the extraterrestrial, all part of this partnership we have with Fathom, where you really get some really great perspective and insight into the movie and get the film re-released and get a chance to see it in the theater. And for movies like E.T. and To Kill a Mockingbird, certainly bring your kids, bring the whole family. It's a great event.
Well, to see these films on the big screen is just going to be so thrilling to people who've never had that experience. I have to tell you, Ben, that I'm old enough to have seen the Boris Karloff Frankenstein movie when it first came out, and I was just a little toddler sitting under the theater seat, just frightened as heck, but just fascinated and just looking up at that big monster on the screen. And in fact, I blame that movie for turning me into a movie addict. After that, I mean, I was hooked. So
well, that means it did its job. Seeing it on the big screen, that's a big event. I think what people forget is that you're not seeing it in the big screen on a big screen on your couch. You're seeing it in a big screen, and you're sitting with 500, 1,000 other people who are as excited about this as you are, and you're seeing it with your soulmates, really. People who, many of us who love classic movies, we were looking at the camera. They didn't have me looking. They were trying a bunch of different things in the beginning, and I think they thought, what does this mean? What's going to happen to Robert? Is Robert going anywhere? Are they going to have commercials? Are they editing the movies? Don't change the thing we love. And it took people 3 or 4 years before they were like, all right, I guess this Mankiewicz guy's okay. He can stay.
Exactly. But I do have a question for you, though. It's how is Turner Classic Movies participating in the 100th anniversary of Universal Pictures?
Well, we're a couple of things. First of all, as you mentioned, coming up, and I guess on the 19th, which I think is a week from tomorrow, right? Isn't that right? Yeah, Wednesday.
Right. Yeah.
We have we're going to be showing The Birds, limited release around the country, one day only. Again, part of Universal's 100th anniversary, and this is you're not just going to go in and get the movie. You'll go in and you'll get a really thoughtful, well-written, involved introduction from Robert Osborne, sort of really doing more than we do on the air, like a few minutes longer than what we do on the air, giving you some historical context, telling you where Tippi was in her life, Tippi Hedren, the star, the other stars, Suzanne Pleshette and Rod Taylor, what they were doing, and, of course, stories about Hitchcock, and we will include then interviews that Robert has done with Tippi. I mean, it will get you the context you need to fully enjoy this film. And then we're doing it later on the 24th, not a week later, but we're doing it on October 24th. Excuse me. We're doing Frankenstein and The Bride of Frankenstein. It's a remarkable double feature.
Great.
That's in October, and then the one in November we have
Huffington Post. And in addition to his hosting activities at TCM, Ben will be hosting a new sci-fi reality series called Hot Set, which is premiering later this month. And he's even reluctantly taken on some acting roles on various TV shows. Welcome to Movie Addict Headquarters, Ben.
Yeah, I didn't. The acting stuff. We need to take that out of my bio. That's crazy.
Well, yes, but Ben, I even understand that you have a dog that may not be such a good actor either.
Oh my God, no! He's a shocking development. He is taking a nap right now. That's how we.
Is that Rookie?
That's Rookie. That's how he spends his days. He's a great dog. No, I am not an actor. I shot something. I had an acting role this morning for a friend of mine for no money. It's for like a student. No, she's not a student film. It's for a little independent short. But as soon as they started rolling it, I had to save my life. I mean, I'm just horrible. And every time I do this, my respect for actors goes up, 3,000-fold. It is not easy to do well. It's easy to do ordinarily, but it is not easy to do well.
Well, but it's easy, I think, to be a movie addict like the rest of us here. Is that right?
Yes, that is. I have the greatest job on the planet.
And I know that you are one. I definitely know that you are one. It's great to have you with us, and it's also great to have James Colt Harrison back to co-host. He's practically one of the family now. Hi, James.
Hi there. It's wonderful, and I am part of the family. I just love being on, and it's great to meet all these wonderful movie people, and just great fun. So I will always do it whenever I'm asked.
Well, we really appreciate that, and so glad that you could be with us today. And I know you're eager to ask Ben some questions, so you have the floor now, James.
I have the floor. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, hi, Ben. It's so nice to meet you. I've watched you many times on television on Turner Classic Movies. And I must say that when you first came on Turner Classic, I said to myself, who is this young kid? Who are they putting on now? Is this a grandson of part of the Mankiewicz movie family? And I just couldn't figure it out. I thought maybe you had just gotten out of college or something, and they were giving you
well, thank you for saying that. I was long out of college, long out of college. But thank you. It's interesting. When it's been 9 years. I believe 9 years this month. I believe I made my debut in September of 2003. Maybe it was August. But it took a long time to sort of win over this audience, and I'm very grateful to TCM for sticking with me. There was and because of the way that fans like you feel about the network, and this is something that is really particular to TCM. I'm a huge sports fan. I love, I think there's great television on now. I'm excited to watch, the season premiere of Sons of Anarchy tonight on FX, and I watch the shows on A&E, Breaking Bad and Mad Men, and all those wonderful HBO and Showtime shows. But I don't feel like I have a duty to protect HBO or ESPN. And I think fans of TCM feel like they love us, but they also feel like they're watching us carefully so that we don't mess this up. And when I started, this young interloper with the goatee, and I wasn't